Good morning and welcome to our live talk program. This is Lorgup here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering natural health on this your Wednesday morning rise and shine. And this morning here, I'm looking at a topic: if rapid decrepitness, the degeneracy, and environmental impact is normal, then eat meat. So welcome again, top of the morning to you here. Hopefully, you had a blessed night rest and you're ready to take on the challenges of this day. Let us pray. Our Father who art in heaven, I thank you for the blessings of your word, for the blessings of the guidance that you continue to give us. May you bless us, dear Lord, as I look at these various different things that are going on in the society. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So I'm looking here at various different impacts of um, eating meat and other environmental impacts. A few things I want to look at. I just use meat as this is one of the major discussion that came up. I think last week there was, or the week before there was a article, I should say, or something that came about because some researchers did some studies on, um, meat eating, and they say that you should continue eating meat at the same rate that was being eat at before. And so I wanted to look at this and take some point of view or some notes from this here as to what exactly one ought to do. There's a situation that happened, I think, for a young lady that got arrested and charged yesterday. And it's just a continued note. This is a side note, a quick side note here on what's going on with the various different issues of drugs. This is fascinating. So it's ex-Radford student said she did cocaine with the devil before stabbing roommate to death. A former student at Radford University in Virginia pleaded guilty Monday to fatally stabbing her roommate, Lusa Cuttin, 21. So her name is Cuttin, not stabbing, but Cuttin, 21, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in the January 24th death of Alexa Cannon, a 20-year-old psychology major from Roanoke, Virginia. Cuttin was sentenced to 40 years in prison, half of which is to be suspended after she serves 20 years, according to the Radford Circuit Court clerk. The judge also ordered that Cuttin have no contact with Cannon's family and that she undergo any mental health treatment recommended by authorities. Cuttin said in a brief statement Monday that she takes full responsibility for Cannon's death, according to NBC News affiliate WSLS-TV Roanoke. There are no words for this tragedy, and my heart is filled with sorrow and grief, Cuttin said. My heart goes out to the Cannon family. I am so sorry. Radford City Commonwealth Attorney Chris Rehak said Cuttin offered no motive for the crime. When officers arrived at the off-campus apartment the two women shared, Cuttin was covered in blood, turned around, put her hands in behind her head, and said, "Arrest me," Rehak said. During interviews with police after her arrest, Cuttin was incoherent at times and mentioned the apocalypse and said she did cocaine with the devil, WLS reported. The Commonwealth's attorney said Cuttin admitted to taking a combination of alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, Adderall, Xanax, mushroom, cocaine the night before the murder. All of this, combined with a lack of sleep, perhaps over a span of days, trigger a psychotic episode that the prosecution and the defense blame for Cannon's death, according to the report. Now that she's stabilized, she hasn't had drugs in that many months. In the many months that she's been incarcerated, the unfortunate thing is now what can she do? Defense attorney Blair Howard told reporters Monday, and there's nothing she can do except express her sincere sorrow for to her family. That's all she can do. The plea agreement spared Cuttin family and friends anguish and anxiety of a trial, Rake said in a statement Monday. So this here happening. So I wanted to share this because of I don't know if they had tests for all of these things, and I don't know if all of these things will come up in a blood test. But this is really some fascinating stuff that's going on here, because here we have a person who claim, I don't know if they had found these substances, remains of these substances in her room, but on the days before she murdered her classmate or roommate, sorry, she did, they said alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, Adderall, which is supposed to be like something to keep you alert and awake and focus, Xanax, mushroom, and cocaine. Now, probably all of these things are either uppers and downers, right? All not probably, but all of these are uppers or downers. They do one or the other. But what's fascinating is the amount, the wide span of it, right? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different psychotic substances. And one thing with these psychotic substances is that marijuana and mushroom definitely can cause you a trip. Like, I mean, you have a definitely like you're seeing hallucinations, and that's to me is what fascinating, because you have things that will either bring you up, bring you down, get your attention, and then put you sleepy. So you're having like a storm inside of your body, and then there's things that will give you a trip. The marijuana, especially if it's edibles, it doesn't say if she smoke it or she ate it. If it's edible, it can give you a trip because it's a different experience than if you smoke it. So here you have marijuana and you have mushroom. Mushrooms can give you a trip where you have an hallucination and you're having all kind of seeing things and stuff like that. So this is what's happening here. So if you see that, this is the continued thing. That's when the Bible says wine is a mocker and strong drink is raging. It is a fascinating concept there, that wine is a mocker and strong drink is raging, because the person is under the influence and then they do something, and morally they're going to be held accountable. She's being held accountable by our counterpart, our fellow human beings, that 20 years in prison is what she needs minimum. So she had to serve 20, and then the other 20 will be dismissed. So basically, you're probably giving her 1 year for the possibility of how long this person could have lived that she murdered. So this is what's happening. So you see this, and this is always, I guess, this is more like this question that I always ask, and I know what you think about this question here, which is how responsible should you and I, a person, be when they do something under the influence? Because I know it's you have first degree, second degree. Most actually didn't give her seems first degree murder. She murdered a person, but how responsible is she for this? Because since she was not under the influence, and I know the concept there is normally if the person does a crime and they're under the influence, then that's their responsibility. They should not use the drugs. Now, as I say, she's using drugs that, who knows? Like, I don't know about you, but when you were, say, 20, did you know that, say, for instance, you could eat edibles, like eat marijuana-laced products, and you could go on a trip? You could have hallucination and see devils or demons or angels, like what she says there, or if you took mushrooms, that could happen. And what could end up happening? Like, did you know that you could end up murdering somebody, and or could have, how much you knew about this and how much you knew the repercussions of this? This is a fascinating question that is often one has to think about. I think about it because, as I say, you could do something and not understand that this could lead to that. And here you are now, when you were just being high, and then you wake up out of your stupor, and then you realize you just murdered. You're a murderer, and you be like, not sober. You wouldn't do this sober. Another similar story happened, was reported in the news, I think 2 days ago, about a gentleman, a young man. I don't know if he's a gentleman, but he was a gentleman probably when he was sober. But he was supposed to get married, and before the wedding, he was drinking, and the wedding party was drinking, and he ended up raping one of the bridesmaid. So one of the bridesmaids in the bridal party ended up raping, and then the next day they went ahead with the wedding, and then they end up through investigation and stuff so forth, they end up arresting him. And you think about it again. So they're drunk. The bridesmaid is drunk. He's drunk. He raped somebody. Now he's a rapist, but he's not a rapist per se when he's sober, because as the Bible says, wine is a mocker and strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. So you're doing something and you're being tricked by it, and the result of it is that you're gonna do something that probably sober you would never ever think about doing. It would not even come in your thinking. But now you're drunk, and now you wake up out of your drunkenness, and you're now a rapist. You're going to prison. You just raped one of the bridesmaid of your wife, one of your wife's friend, and now there goes your career, your family, your reputation, because now you're viewed as dangerous because you've done something. You took advantage of somebody when they're at their vulnerable state, so you're viewed as a monster. And yet, it's sober, you probably view somebody who did that as a monster. You think, how dare somebody do something like that, took advantage of somebody. So you see these things continue going on, and you see the conceived problem. I think I may probably mention this, that the University of Ohio, one of the universities over there of Ohio, suspended all the fraternities in their universities because of the constant reports of hazing. Well, again, it's the same thing. Probably me, you are friends, and we probably play around or horse around, and probably even do rough playing at times. But now both of us are drunk, or one of us are drunk, and now that goes from horsing around to now I'm abusing you. But in my sober mind, I probably wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't be a monster. But now I'm drunk, and the devil is in charge, and now I do these things. And in a sober mind, I wouldn't do it, and I would think somebody would do something like that, which is cruel. But here am I doing something cruel, and there's the fascination here of the fact that within a few days before she murdered this lady, she had alcohol, tobacco, which is interesting, marijuana, Adderall, Xanax, mushroom, cocaine. It's like she's just collecting the stuff, and just who would know? Like who would believe that this would be the thing? So the Bible says, wine is a mocker, strong drink is rage, and this is fascinating to watch how, as I say, people who probably would never think about do things like this would do something else, something that's just totally crazy. But this is where this is how the substance does. You see a person on drugs, and they're not in charge of themselves. They have another god. And God is not a nice God. It's a wicked God. It's a terrible thing. Now in another article, I was going to say, I was going to repeat the text, but I want to read this thing here. I see three, and I was going to give you a verse. So this other article I want to share with you here is taken from NBCnews.com, and it is entitled "Three Sexual Transmitted Infections Hit New High Again in the U.S." So the U.S. infections from three sexual transmitted disease have risen for the fifth consecutive year. More than 1.7 million cases of chlamydia were reported last year. The infection rate rose 3% from 2017. So since 2017, a 3% rise in the chlamydia rate. It's the most ever reported in a year, though the trend is mainly attributed to increased testing. So some of it is, well, I'll finish the article explains itself. So to testing, about 580,000 gonorrhea were reported. That's the highest number since 1991. The rate rose 5%. Scientists worry antibiotic resistance may be a factor. So we'll get back to that in a second. And the syphilis rate rose 15%. That's really high. About 35,000 cases of the most contagious form of the disease were reported, also the most since 1991. The Center for Disease and Control and Prevention released the numbers Tuesday. The increase coincide with public health funding cuts and clinic closures. So two things are going on there: public health funding cuts and clinic closures. So here's what's going on. So since the Affordable Care Act, they believe probably more testing has been going on. So more advancement also in the ability to test and so forth. So more testing and more testing would reveal that more people. So here's the thing then. If you have more testing being done, and this is part of the increase, just take that first thought there. More testing is resulting in we finding that more people have chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, and other diseases, STDs. So that tells you then that means there's more people walking around probably unbeknown to themselves to have chlamydia, what is it, syphilis and gonorrhea. You get that? So that means the test, or probably the person felt some symptoms and they said, well, let's go get this tested out. And they say, okay, so we are more. Probably more people were walking around with it, but probably because they didn't have health insurance before, they just never got confirmation. So that means they could, you could be talking to them and say, hey, look, let's do something. And they say, yeah, let's do it. And as you say, are you all right? And they say, yeah, we're good. We don't know of anything else because we never got it confirmed. So now it's confirmed. So more cases are being confirmed, 3%, 5%. These are important. But syphilis, which has been fascinating because syphilis, is severe. And syphilis is 15%, which I don't know if that can be simply accounted for testing, because syphilis at one point was thought to be almost eradicated. Now syphilis is on the comeback. And these trends started more powerfully in in Obama's administration. Now, I say this because it's important, because remember, part of it is the testing. Well, part of it, they say that a lot of these diseases, the highest rate that are getting these diseases are homosexuals, and a lot in the black community. So you find higher rates in the black community, higher rate in the homosexual community, higher rate in the homosexual black community. So keep that in mind. So what we're seeing here is some of this could be, again, towards Affordable Care Act, because a lot of the blacks probably didn't have access to be tested. This is why when you have to have a system that is fair, because then you could have people walking around not knowing and then they infecting each other. So anyhow, so Affordable Care Act does that, but also part of it is that a higher rate is also in the homosexual community, because I believe some of what Obama did by basically, you know, affirming that lifestyle in legal processes and parlance, end up being that you almost say to the person, it's normal, just go ahead and enjoy yourself. Some of it also, I believe, is the increase in medication to treat things like AIDS. So a lot of young people are afraid of the HIV and stuff like that. And as a matter of fact, there's round number 2 of approvals being done right now for the the AIDS drugs that's supposed to prevent. You take it like a vaccine or something like that, and it's supposed to prevent you catching AIDS. So that means a person who doesn't have AIDS could sleep with somebody um, with AIDS and they don't catch it. So the round 2, I think, is coming. So I think they said they've improved the drug. So this is giving people a lot of confidence. They're saying, well, basically, I can do this and not be affected negatively by it. So keep that in mind. That's very important. So when you look at this here, some way, not negative or positive, just talking about literally what I think is going on. It is that, environment where, the drugs, more testing, everybody should love who they want to love. That type of environment is increasing. What we find also, some of these increase are tied to the apps, the dating apps, and also the grind, like apps like Grinder, where somebody can find a person to grind with, or homosexual partners and stuff like that. Those apps, I think, are help creating this type of, sleep around, free sex type of environment. Also, the interesting last statement is that as the increase for whatever reason we have just I've just mentioned here, because there's various different reasons. Second to last point here on this, whatever reason, it coincides with a time where they're doing public health cuts to cut funding for clinics and the closures of clinics. So although this is happening, I think under Obamacare we saw one of the increase in what they call emergency service. I can't remember the name of it, but they're like clinics, but you see them popping up all over the place, where you basically can go to this place and you get emergency care, but it's not an emergency room. I can't remember what it's called. Close. So these closures are happening. So this is not good. And then the last point here, which is the point that I've been covering for quite a few years now, I've been tracking, and every time something come up on the radar, I make sure to take note of it, which is this point where it says scientists worry antibiotic resistance may be a factor. So that's important, because what it is now, before the confidence was with penicillin and all that, is that you go to the doctor, you get a shot, and you're now immune, or you overcome the disease. The penicillin or the antibiotic remove the disease out of your system. So that would be chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis. Well, here goes the point. Now these drugs, these diseases are becoming drug resistant, and every year the percentage of drug resistant become increase. So what does that mean? That means that the person who have that confidence that the drugs can take care of the business and they can just do whatever they want to do is now being hit with a disease that the drug cannot touch. The drug cannot harm it, so to speak, and it just spreads like wildfire. This is on the increase. And so this is something that I've noted over the years, that every year chlamydia, gonorrhea, and primarily gonorrhea, syphilis, I would say that's the two I'm more pay attention to. They're on the increase. So keep that in mind. And urgent care, thanks, Tamar. Urgent care and walk-in clinics. So urgent care and walk-in clinics have been increasing all over the place, more and more investments. Where before you start clinics and stuff like that, they got rid of the clinics. Now they're basically, to me, urgent care is just clinics. I don't know what they just should have called it clinics. You go to the clinic instead of going to the hospital. So the point though here is that, thanks. The point there is that as you see this increase, one had to be more careful with what you do with your body. That's important point there, and everything is that it would go along with that. Save sex and then go get married. All of that is important. So that's my second thing I wanted to put. That is a trend that is going. Now to my main discussion here. So my main discussion, if I drop this, is on this issue here of meat and then climate and everything. So it's going to be hodgepodge. So I was reading an article on health, and it was a short article, and in it they had this graph that I wanted to share with you, and it was talking about the whole idea that 2 weeks ago or three, I can't remember, but recently there's these scientists came up with this report that to try to contradict some of the more recent reports that meat eating not only is bad for health, but it causes cancer. And some scientists, they didn't do a research themselves. They just studied the other researchers, and from the various different research that they pull, they came to a conclusion that you could eat meat at the same rate, and you will not get a bad effect. So keep that in mind. I'm not going to try to per se debunk that, because I'm going to debunk that to a certain degree. But my focus here is going to be more on, I'll quickly say that, which is my topic. When they did the research, to me, what debunks what they're saying is this, which is my topic: if rapid decrepitness, degeneracy, and then I'm going to talk about the environmental impact a little bit more here. But if rapid degeneracy and decrepitness is normal, then eating meat is okay at the same rate. So that means if I look around me and the average person is going into a state of, they're falling apart, so to speak, they're degenerating, they're having all these different diseases at a certain rate. And I want to know what is one of the biggest driver. Well, meat is one of the biggest driver, animal products. So we're not even talking about disease yet. We're just talking about meat. Like if you just think about it. So anyhow, so if you have If you have this is the rate, and somebody said, well, this is normal life. This is how life is. And I said, yes, this is how life is. But what if you change a factor and you take meat out of the equation and animal products, milk, cheese, dairy, all that stuff, eggs, and you remove that and you find that one of the results of that is that you replace it with healthy, organic, naturally grown, tree ripened food. And you find that one of the results is that rapid degeneracy becomes slow or stopped, and you slow that down. Then just the idea of, yes, if you continue with this rate, normal happen. The normal is at this age that happened to you, at that age that happened to you. You reach 60, it's time for knee replacement. You reach 70, it's time for you to, start getting other things replaced, or they bury you. And what if that changed by the way you eat? See, this is what is not looked upon. So sometimes, they say like a lie can be an omission. You just didn't say something. And so by omitting that thing, because that one piece of factor changes everything. To me, this is where that is. So this is what I want to talk in the next half an hour with you here is, and just in case you came late, I was having some problems starting because of a mixer board. So I'm just halfway through. So that's what it is. If you just join on. So notice here, if rapid decrepitness, if it's something in it, you ever look at a house and the house look like it's not being fixed up, it's not being repaired in a while. If that is acceptable and that's the norm, then I understand. You eat something and the result is this, then that's the norm. But if you look at a house probably that has brick facing, or it has certain type of stronger material that will survive better long term, and you look at it and it doesn't look as aged, then you say, well, the better material result in it looking stronger and better, last longer. Then I could say, well, I understand. It is so the better material can make it look better. So if you're putting something that has a higher value and it's not going to make you age as much, you're not going to feel as worn because your body's going to get better repair material, then I would say that study becomes invalid because they're just looking at the norm and they say, well, based upon the norm, Aunt Tilly is going to have a heart attack at 70 or 60. That's the norm. But if I say, well, what if Aunt Tilly does not have the heart attack until 100 if she eat a certain way? Then that changes everything. That changes the equation. So when you look at that, you can see the difference and how that difference can make it's a world of difference. And that's to me is what these type of discussion often doesn't involve. It's just you're saying, well, this is the norm, and this is how it's gonna be. Like if I remember I was in a hospital one time and the nurse says so I was visiting somebody else and the nurse next door said to the person, so well, when you get a certain age, you just take a lot of, because the person was complaining about taking all these tablets. I just say, when you get a certain age, you just take a lot of tablets. That's what you do. You take a lot of medicine. So like that's the norm. So if the rate of taking medicine at say 40 is say 2, and when you reach 50 is say 3, you reach 60s 4, and when you reach 70s 5 a day, you take that and that's your norm. And so somebody would say, well, just keep eating the way you're eating. But if you don't want to go down that road, then that's a separate norm. So into that discussion though, I want to introduce this other idea. Because one of the biggest thing being talked about is climate change, right? And part of the discussion with meat eating and animal eating is climate change, because a lot of deforestation, a lot of the resources that could be used to feed people has to be used to feed hogs or cows and stuff like that. So and chicken. So when you take that into account, well, normally what they say was, well, climate change is affected by meat eating because of the pressure that all these animals, these millions of animals every year, have on the ecology. And the general discussion in climate change is environmental. A big part of it is environmental impact. Now, the impact of climate change on human health, right? So sometimes what I feel is not what I feel, but how I think about this is this, right? They'll say impact of climate change on human health. So this is something I'm looking at in front of me here. So the impact. So this is how climate change. The changing climate is going to impact this. But often I'm wondering if because everybody I think knows this, but I don't know if the packaging sometimes is throwing people off. So instead of saying the impact upon the degradation of the environment results in this, they'll say, well, it's the change in the climate. But the change in the climate, in essence, which I think everybody knows, but to me, talking about packaging, is caused by destruction of the environment. And these type of things have a result. So notice here, we talk about air pollution, right? So air pollution, part of air pollution, they say, is even growing these cows. If you ever drive past a cow or a pig or a chicken farm, it is unbelievable when the fans are on and pumping out that air. The gases coming out of there is unbelievable. Not exciting in any way. So, but that's part of the pollution, so to speak, of the air. But the bigger air pollutions are this what we burn. You know, you take all this carbon, which is the crude that is in the ground. You have to process it, so some of that is burned, and you have to get rid of waste and stuff like that. And then you burn all that and send it is carbon literally in the air. You send smoke, so to speak, in the air. And all of that is just send up pollution at high rates. So you're destroying what's there and turn it into something else, but that something else have an impact. And so is that in itself is changing, they would say, the climate, right? But that in itself is causing like asthma and other cardiovascular disease. So the impact of one thing upon another. So sometimes I think I know this is the catchphrase to explain what's going on, which is the climate is changing. But some of that climate is changing. I don't know if, so normally you think climate, a lot of time we talk about, I don't know, probably for me and my thinking, but we think about air, right? So that's why I go to the first one, air pollution. The air is one of the biggest thing you think about. The air that we breathe, climate change, affecting tornadoes, in hurricanes and stuff like that, which is I believe is true, because you send all that carbon up in the air, you're gonna affect something, because all that was in the ground at one point, you burn it, you change the form of what was in the ground, you shoot it up in the air, and now what's gonna be the result of that? Nobody's really sure per se, but it can easily be thought about that that's probably why we have in these increase um disasters. Although I note that they said even Christian theologians are looking at it and say, well, primarily the disasters had abated and was very quiet, except probably for Sandy and I think one more storm that came up to the northeast, which is ironic, came up to the northeast, up to New Jersey, New York. But the storms had been calm for the most part in America. But the fires kept on burning and the tornadoes kept on happening. But the tornado, the hurricanes been calm, but they were heavy on the bush, and they've been heavy, terrible on the Donald Trump. So anyhow, so when you look at this going on with this climate change, this discussion, you find that pollutant is a major problem, because you're taking a massive amount of pollution and you're throwing it in the air, but also you're taking the pollution and you're throwing it in the waters. So some of that is we're getting the animals being contaminated, but also we have to eat so much animals. We never ate this amount of animal back in the past. I know they never have that much people, but I'm talking about per person. I think they say the average American, more than any other country in the world, eat 8 ounces of meat a day. So the average person, so that means all 300 and something million of us eat about an average, if you divide that 320 something million or whatever it is, and the amount of animals being killed per pound, we do about 8 ounces. So that means if you're not eating the meat, somebody's making up your difference. So that means they're doing a pound a day. So that's a lot of meat, because before we didn't have refrigeration. So now all of this process and industrialization of meat process so that we can eat that much meat like never before in history. It has an environmental impact. Now, if you say climate change to the average person who says conservative, they say it's a hoax. But it cannot be a hoax because I say climate is to me, when you say climate, how's the climate? I don't know if you normally put the rivers into that. Does that make sense? You normally wouldn't say um, climate change is affecting all those dead fishes on the side of the road. I could be wrong, but I just don't see it this way. Like it's never communicated this way. So then there has to be a deeper thought into what is that pollutant doing to the fishes. Does it make sense what I'm saying? Hopefully. You can text me and tell me, Lloyd, it makes sense or it makes no sense. But what is that pollutant doing to the fishes in the sea? And can you really say that's climate change? Or that's man pollution, which I know that's what they're saying. But sometimes it's just like we're destroying the earth to me is a different, better thing. Like the Bible says, God will destroy. In Revelation, it says, God will destroy those who destroy the earth. See, that to me just sounds more like it's a destruction of the earth. What is really going on? If you say climate change, it sounds like it can be left up to interpretation. But if you say, okay, you see, when we kill when we wipe out a whole area and there's no more place for the birds, well, those birds, they normally eat insects and stuff. So then we have more insects. The more insects, then we have more uh, insects to infect us. So that change is going to cause more malaria, more, um, you know, different type of fevers, more Lyme disease, more West Nile, more chikungunya. That's not because the climate has changed per se. I know what they're saying. That's their catchphrase. But I think that this thing is a little bit more complicated because, as I say, climate can be viewed in a certain way. So that is basically to me one of the problems. So go back now to say meat eating. You could say meat eating, right, is part of the issue. If I eat this amount of meat and I look 10, say I eat 4 ounces of meat a day and it caused me to look like I'm 5 years older, and I eat 8 ounces a day, it caused me to look like I'm 10 years older, and to have the physical illness of somebody 10 years older than me. And if I eat a pound a day now, because somebody's making up for everybody that doesn't eat meat, all the Indians and stuff like that. So if I eat a pound a day, it make me look 20 years older, and it make me experience the disease of somebody 20 years older than me. And the scientists come along and say, well, that's normal because that's what the average person eat, right? So why change? This is the same thing. Well, go back. That's not say climate change. That's say me polluting my body. So just like I'm an ecosystem and you're an ecosystem, depends on what we put in our bodies. Depend on how we make our bodies react and how our bodies repair. If I fall down and I get a little hurt, that hurt goes to a sore. That sore goes to whatever. Next, I'm in the doctor and I have to see a orthopedic surgeon, and and it's one thing after the other, and I'm behaving as if I'm 70 years old and I'm only 50. I'm not 50, but I'm gonna say. So then imagine that could be the same thing. So this is to me why this is if it's the norm, but this is not the norm. You know what I'm saying? Like the norm is not wasn't the norm for 6,000 something years or 6,000 years almost to take um crude at the rate that we do and burn things at the rate that we burn. So somebody would say, well, the environment is cyclical or the climate is cyclical. Yeah, I guess to a certain degree. But when you talk about the weather, the climate also called the weather, where meteorologists look at. But I don't think any time in history we have ever burned that much. Now I know somebody said, well, then wasn't there burning in Saddam and stuff like, yeah, but that's just one little area, one city. But this level of burning stuff, this level of sucking stuff with straws, massive straws out of the earth, processing it, and then burn it in various different industries and cars and stuff like that. We never did that before. So that can affect, per se, the climate. But deeper is what now we're doing with water supply, because the water is not climate, right? It's not part of that system, because the water could just simply mean the water is poison. And because the water is poison, the water that we drink affect me negatively. And now, like what happened in Flint, Michigan, or Newark, and some of these different places, the water is poison, and so that poison me as an individual. That has nothing per se to do with, and this is not an argument against or for, but that has nothing to do with the climate, because the climate is normally a measurement of what's going on with temperature, humidity, atmosphere, pressure, wind, precipitation. There ain't nothing to do with that. But it's important for me and you to know that all of this has to do with degradation of the environment around us, the resources around us, and how that negatively impact me. And me, as I look at the earth is like a living organism. If you understand and you know what's going on the earth, you look at it, you say, oh, it's like a living organism. It's self-sustaining. But you and I are the same thing. We need input, like the earth need input by the sun. It's an outside entity. You need input by the moon. That's an outside entity. But as an entity, we are similar. Me and you, we are an organism that is like an ecosystem, and we need outside input. But those outside input, they are supposed to be positive, but when they're negative, they can negatively impact our health and our well-being. So the earth is the same way. Just like if I don't eat a lot of organic natural fruits and vegetables, then when I get too much sun, or if I do get too much sun, it could cause my skin cancer because my skin is weak. It's the same thing with the earth. If the earth is dealing with normal pressures that they put under, but then you have this added pressure that never happened for thousands of years, where we just burn stuff and we just take stuff and pollute the atmosphere and the oceans, then you're going to get negative impact. Again, notice we use more pesticide and we use more chemicals, and we have more people having asthma and respiratory problem and allergy problem. Now think about it. Some of those problems, like allergies, have nothing to do with the air that we breathe. A lot of it has to do with proteins, have to do with certain chemical allergies. You know, a lot of people are allergic to red number 40. And if they eat it, they have psychological, mental problems where they can't think properly, they can't think straight. They having problem processing, and so they're allergic to it. But it's a chemical they're allergic to. That has nothing to do with the again, it has nothing to do with temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure, wind, precipitation. None of that. Now that's another problem, because that's problem again is come from burning. So it's the same way I could eat meat and somebody said, well, it's cyclical or it's normal. You eat this amount, but we never ate that amount before. So even somebody said, well, I do eat some meat, but the type of meat, the amount of meat we eat and the type of food we're eating, it's not the same as 100 years ago when they had problem with meat, and yet people were just basically eating some free range meat. You see what I'm saying? It's like, think about that. You're not eating free range animals from 100 years ago. The animals now, even the free range one, they have to impact with so much chemicals and pollutants that the earth is so polluted and damaged that you're not just eating more than before. That's going to affect your body internally. The volume that your body have to process. Because think about it, a pig, when you eat a pig, it stays in your body for about 72 hours. You eat a vegan meal, it's about 4 to 5 hours to stay in your body. Just think about that. One is filled with garbage and all kind of parasites and stuff, and has to be cured because it's so dangerous before you eat it. The other one, you can literally pull off the tree and eat it. Within 4 to 5 hours, you're hungry again. It's gone to your body. Within 24 hours, you're passing it out. The pig stays there, and 72 hours later, it's still rotting and putrefying in your body and killing you. So you look at that. That's similar to ecology. It's more complicated. Think about this again. With our body as an ecosystem, right? You can eat a very healthy diet and you still look like you're having rapid degeneracy and aging. Why? Because you're stressed out. Somebody say, but that had nothing to do with the air you breathe. It had nothing to do with water you drink. It had nothing to do with food you eat. Absolutely right. And this is, to me, is similar to where somebody said, well, why do you say that? Because I believe that morality can affect even the environment. And that's a whole nother story. So it's important to think, because remember, there's things that happen when God says, I'm cursed the earth for your sake because you're wicked. And that had nothing to do, that's a stress on the earth based upon wickedness of human beings. It's a cause and effect that is not seen by the eyes. Same thing with stress. You can see a person with all these various different diseases. And one of the always commonality with a lot of these autoimmune disease is the person don't know to handle their stress. They're a bag of stress. And a lot of that's come with autoimmune disease. So it's not something that has to do with environment. It has to do with the mind. So notice here, increase in diseases, right? Notice here, we have the problem also with, you could have poop getting into water and then it affect you. Well, that's not climate change. That's just simply you poison the water with a lot of poop. So this is why now you notice in most areas, at least I don't know, I have to talk about New Jersey now. In New Jersey, one thing that they're forcing people to do is that, a lot of older people now are dying, are going to retirement, so they're selling their properties. So you find the people who do septic systems are busy. Why? Because the health department will force these people to build better leach beds. Hopefully that's the right way to call it. So when the water leaves from the septic system, it goes into a tank, a holding tank. Then from the holding tank, after it build up a certain amount, the gray water gets sprayed into a leach bed and it seeps down into the earth. Well, a septic system leach bed, what it does is it processes that water, and it processes it through stone and then through other layers, so that by the time it hit the groundwater, it's already pre-filtered. So it filtered the gray water. So that's one of the things that they're forcing people to do. Why? Because if, like for me, one part of my property has a leach bed and then other side of the property has a well. Well, if I don't process that gray water, it's gonna get into the ground, then it's gonna go into my well, then I'm gonna pump it back up and drink it. Well, I most actually I go one better. What I do is I have a whole filter system, because I can't take any chances that the water from my neighbor, the water from whatever, what if their well is not working right? I mean, their leach bed is not working right. Their water is gonna get into my groundwater, and I'm gonna use their groundwater. I'm gonna bathe in their stuff. I don't want to do that. One of the things they've tested and showed is that they believe that why some of the frogs are becoming feminized and some of the men are having this femininity and low sperm count is because a lot of the female hormonal drugs that they use, like for birth control or for things like that, is urinated out. I think 30% of it is urinated out, and then it gets into the groundwater. It's not cannot be properly processed. It gets into the well, and then you bathe it, you drink it, you get into the lakes and stuff like you swim in it. And they believe that says some of this could be causing the frogs to turn female and the men to become almost sterile or weak. Look into that. Don't tell me you heard this here first. So but when you look at this again is not climate per se. This is just, I think it's better to just call it we destroying ourselves. Because when you say climate is a climate specifically, from my understanding of the definition of climate, has to do with where you measure temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure, the barometer pressure, wind, and precipitation. How much precipitation is in the year today? That can give you a prediction of all of those things. Can give you a prediction. Is it going to rain? Is it going to whatever? That's climate change. That's climate being changed. Climate and atmosphere are similar. What's going on in the atmosphere above us? Well, as I say, the broader discussion, I think, is because it's easy to poo-poo that. But the broader discussion, if I can test and I can show that more and more frogs in these polluted waterways are becoming feminized, and then I can see all these little boys are becoming feminized, and some people believe it's a change in what's going on in their gonads, then because that affect estrogen and testosterone affect our brains. The female get a 70% testosterone to the brain, and they behave a certain way. The male get the female gets 70% estrogen. They affected a certain way. The male gets 70% testosterone. He behaves in a way. What if you drop that and you make the male become more estrogen dominant? How does he behave? That's testable. That has nothing to do with that. That could be just simply all the hormones and BP and stuff like that we partake of, all the different weird disease that we get from these animals. That to me is a bigger thing. So if rapid decrepitness and degeneration is normal, then go ahead and eat more, because what you're doing, you're putting something, going more meat because you're putting something in your body that is affecting you negatively. It's affecting your ecosystem. Because as again, we like the earth, we have output from outside, but what we get, the output that we get from outside, if it is negative to us, it damages us. But we, like the earth, we put something in our body for energy and so forth, and it's get, notice here we're having a problem with the degradation of the not just the environment but the soil itself. If every year you keep putting in chemical fertilizers, pesticide, all the genetically engineered stuff, after a while the soil become denatured and the soil cannot fight for itself, so disease take over. When you grow on these massive mega farms and it become a monocrop, then disease take over, and what you have is foods that are degenerate. So you could have a carrot, you look at it and it's huge, it's humongous, but when you test it, there's hardly any nutrients in it. So it looks orange, it looks like a carrot, you have the basic niacin and stuff like that, no, nitrogen and stuff like that to make it do what it does. But nutrient wise, selenium and all the other inert minerals that you're supposed to get, trace minerals from things like beet and carrots and stuff like that, it's just not there. So you're eating food that is chemically grown, conventionally grown, but it's really just waste. It's a lot of ash you're eating. And you look like you're eating ash. You start looking like they're about to say ashes to ashes, dust to dust over you, because you're dying. Now you switch that and you say, you know what, I'm going to take care of the environment or the internals of my body. You start eating healthier and you realize, wow, this makes a difference. You start getting some sleep, drinking some clean, purified water, filtered water. You start saying, man, my kidneys finally feel happy. This feels good. I think it's the same thing with the earth. But just to say climate, because climate could be more to me, like to me, climate is like stress. It's, you're in a climate that's very stressful, you're going to start feeling beaten up. But that's not the only impact on health. Health also has to do with the water you drink. And so here we talk about like extreme heat. But again, that is one measure of climate or measure of the environment. When we talk about severe weather, some of that is measurable, some of that is it boggles the mind, because even as I say, scientists have not figured it out why at a certain juncture we had a slowdown with hurricanes and tornadoes, and then now we have an uptick. That could be a measure of immorality and wickedness, so you it's more complicated than just simply saying eat the same because what was regular 100 years ago is not regular now. Number one, the volume of meat we eat then is not the same we eat now, because refrigeration and an advancement in technology has made it possible to eat more. Delivery mechanism where you can go to a fast food restaurants, and the trucking industry has made it possible to eat more. That wasn't the case before. The same thing with also the pollution, the industrial revolution, or the chemical revolution, I should say, with the advent of penicillin and stuff, made it possible to have these massive farms that you can have animals grow up in filth and still stay alive to be killed, to be put on your plate. So we have in more messed up animals that are polluted, and then we have more volume that we can eat. So the volume has increased, and so they're saying, hey, keep the same rate. But also what you find is that the size of the people has increased because they eat more human growth hormone in their meat, and also the decrepitness of the people have increased. The more degenerative diseases have increased, the more pain has increased. So if that's the normal, we say, well, this is the accept norm, this is the baseline. Well, sure, if you want that baseline, you go ahead with the baseline practice. But if you don't want that baseline, you switch practice. Same thing with the earth. If for 6,000 almost years or so that we have never burnt this amount of stuff, we had a flood before, but never this level of fires being burned, and that's the norm, and there's no option, I understand. But if you have an option to burn less and to send less carbon up in the atmosphere, that's not atmosphere, that's climate. That to me is, you can affect that. Number one. Number two, to me, it's deeper than that, because it's not just climate change. And somehow I don't even like that term, because it doesn't fully explain that me pouring acid or me taking, Freon and pouring it in my yard and killing the grass. That's not climate. That's me killing my grass. And then now that water rain fall and it pulls all that Freon and all that acid and everything into my well. I pumped it back up, I bathed in it. Now I start having all kind of weird problems going on in my body. Well, that's not a measure of temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure, wind, and precipitation. That's a measure of me mad or me not understanding how I poison myself. If I go and all my neighbors that live in the lake, around the lake community, if all their septic system is not working and all their, their all their all their medicine for, all the medicine that they eat, as I said, most medicine goes out the body about 30-40%. It goes back into that lake. All their bacteria and their color and everything goes into the lake. Then I go swim in the lake, take dunk in the lake, and then I drink some of that water by accident, and then I come up with all kind of stomach infection. That's not just climate change. That we polluting the atmosphere more, and we're reaping the result. If we have increased cancers because I smoke more weed and I smoke more tobacco and all these things, and I come down with cancer, that had nothing to do with climate. That just have to do with me killing myself. So a lot of what we're talking about is when we look at aging and decrepitness and degeneracy and rapid. I'm not because we're all getting old, but rapid where it's being pushed on fast is because of the type of diet and lifestyle we have, and the more chemicals, the more genetically engineered products, the more crazy foods we eat, the more wild animal we eat. All these things, they have impact me negatively. The worse the water quality, the more chemicals that cause allergies, the more um, impact that we have on the food systems, the more environmental degradation where we just destroy vast amount of trees so that we can have more farming. All of that is impact that are negative, and we just need to talk about the negative impact because it seems like that phrase climate change has been co-opted to make it sound like people are silly, that there's no negative impact, as I say, for just burning stuff with no consideration, polluting the rivers, polluting the atmosphere. And as I say now, yeah, we kill the birds and we destroy the bird habitats. Now we're having more diseases from ticks and from things that the birds used to eat. I think we ought to consider this and consider as well how we impact. And as I say this, you might not can change the globe, but you can change your personal choices, how you treat your body, how you treat your house you live in, your yard, because at least that's your little world. And if you can't change that, you might not be able to change the world. I would say first change that. But in the meantime, like we're doing this program here, we put the information out there to encourage other people to say, look, you probably need to find more natural ways to do life, period, in every aspect of life. And God will bless you. Let's pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you for the blessings of today, for the blessings of your word. And I pray, dear Lord, that you may continue to impact with us with being more natural, being more considerate of the planet that you put us on, and be more considerate of our bodies that we may not destroy it. May you bless us, we pray, for Christ's sake. Amen. Thank you for being with me here on Revive Form Radio. Looking forward to talking to you again live tomorrow morning where we should do current events. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.